Okay, welcome back. Hopefully this is going to be the last installment on the NVT Easy Rider. I've got the stator plate mounted on the rebuilt engine, and because it was actually fully rotated clockwise, I could actually mount it in the same position it was on the other engine, so hopefully the timing should be correct. Now onto the cylinder barrel and piston. So I've checked the Haynes manual, and there is indeed a picture of the needle roller bearing fitted into the con rod with a single oil hole in the end of it. So I presume this is actually the original bearing for this engine. I'm also going to go with the cylinder barrel that came off the running engine, because the actual bore seems to be okay and there's no wear lip at the top of it, which is a good sign. And I'll be fitting the piston that came out of that engine because the rings appear to be new and they're free to rotate. There's a little bit of this kind of tarnishing on the piston, but it's not scored or anything. I have given the top a bit of a polish though. So I'm going to show you a little trick now. Most manuals will tell you to put the piston onto the con rod first and then lower the barrel onto the piston, at the same time trying to get these piston rings inserted in the barrel, which is a bit of a pain because there's a little pin there which is there to stop the rings from rotating, and they're on opposite sides of the piston, and if they're not in the right place you will not get those rings inserted in the barrel. So I have a solution to this, and that is to put the piston in the barrel first. That way then you can actually see what you're doing at your workbench, and it's much easier to get those rings in. If you then put the circlip on one side of the piston, gudgeon pin on the other side, you can then lower the piston and barrel as one assembly over the con rod, and then when you can see the bearing lining up with the gudgeon pin, also known as the wrist pin in the States, you can then tap it in place with no danger of bending the con rod because the actual cylinder barrel mounting studs are holding everything in place. That's the gudgeon pin in. Always remember to remove your sock that you stuffed the crankcase with to stop any crap from getting in there, and make sure there's a lot of lubrication as well around the piston and the barrel, so you're not putting it in dry. I fit a new cylinder head gasket here as it came with the gasket kit. I'm just going to put the cylinder head on the bolts like so. I'll show you another little trick that I kind of came up with on my Tomos moped. It's a bit trickier on this one because of its horizontal cylinder barrel, not a kind of diagonally mounted cylinder barrel. These washers are really fiddly to get in, but if you take your washer, stick it on a screwdriver like that, and then just let it slide down straight on top of the actual cylinder mounting stud. I've just checked the Haynes mount to find out what the actual tightening torque is for these cylinder head mounting nuts. And there isn't one. It does state to tighten them diagonally, which is kind of standard practice, but I couldn't actually find a figure. These are M6. Tomos uses M7, and they're rated at 9 foot-pounds. So that's generally just a little bit more I can do with this. So they've been tightened diagonally. So that should be good enough, and I will check them again with the torque wrench once it's in the frame. So as you can see, I have skipped ahead quite a bit as the engine is now in the frame. I didn't film it because this frame's been restored and I didn't want to damage the paint while I was effing and blinding trying to get it in because it was a very tight fit on those engine mounting bolts. Currently putting the oil into it, because we are almost at 0 degrees out here today. The oil is going in like treacle. It is really thick. Next job though is wiring loom. So to make the new wiring loom, I'm using this. This is a 7-core trailer wiring cable. It's got the correct size wires, which is what we've used on the original wiring loom, and it's also the same colours codes as well. Plus there's some spare wires if the owner wants to add brake lights or anything like that. Excuse any wind noise, it's picking up a little bit. I have now nearly finished. The pedals are on. I have fitted this part here, which was missing. The owner supplied it the other week. I only came with 1 mounting screw, so I found 4 stainless steel ones like this for each corner. That one had a captive nut in it, so I had to cut it down because it didn't drop right the way through the mounting bracket, with these just as a nut and a washer. Okay, I have spent about an hour trying to start this bike, and it is really annoying me. I'll show you why it's annoying me now, because bear in mind, this carb has been completely ultrasonically cleaned. The white stuff has reappeared again in it, which is coming from the petrol tank, which is a right pain in the ass. Okay, so after cleaning up the carburetor for the umpteenth time, I find it would only run on choke, and only if you blip the throttle. I had a thought. That's a clone of a 1412 carburetor, and I jetted it as per the manual with a 48 jet. One of these. Unfortunately, the 1412 carburetor is not an exact clone. When I actually measured the Venturi, these are 1515s, so that 48 jet was way too small, and that's why it would only run on choke. I've just put a 63 in, and as you can hear, it's running quite nicely. That rather short and uninspiring test ride. There's a few things I can check. First of all, that saddle is absolutely awful to ride. It pretty much stays at that angle even when you're sat on it, and there is a spring underneath it to give you a little bit of suspension, but it's not great. It really needs to be adjusted. Brakes seem to be working okay, but I'd rather they be better. I think if I could do with some new shoes, to be honest. As the engine, it ran well. Didn't want to get in the second gear though, so I suspect the time was a little bit retarded, and I did notice there was some play on the flywheel when I put it on around the woodruff key. And if you've got a couple of millimeters of play either side of that woodruff key, it also means you've got a couple of degrees fore and aft before top dead center, which means the timing could be out still. So I'm going to check that next. The ignition timing was just as it was in part 1 when I checked it, and it was spot on, although the spark plug indicates that we are running rich. We've put off all the assembly oil now, so it's probably a true indication of the mixture setting. It didn't feel like it was bogging at all, to be fair. But I'm going to drop the jet size down to a 54. I guess that's the largest I've got on a 50. And any smallest 60s, so I'm going to give that a go. So just a little test ride with the 54 jet fitted, and I can definitely feel it going to second gear. It still feels as smooth as it did with the larger jet in it, which is a bit strange. But I think after a decent test ride, we better tell if it's the right jet or not by checking the plug colour. I think probably get away with the 56 because it does seem to take a little bit longer to warm up on choke now. But it doesn't bog at all when you open the throttle, and it doesn't sort of like flat spot either. So we're quite close to being right. I've also adjusted that seat, and it's much nicer now. It's lower, tilted back a bit. And I've also adjusted the brakes a bit more as well, and they give it a little bit more confidence when stopping. So it's time to hand it back to the owner, and on to the next project. So I'd like to thank you for watching and for subscribing if you have done so. If you haven't, please do so because it does help boost the channel. And I'll see you all again soon.